Okay, so like we were discussing, there's the onload event for the window that's going to load on page load. We are going to get the count of how many divs are there by class name main. Well, we don't even care if it's a div. If an element has a class name main, we want to retrieve that, put it into a collection, get the length of that collection, and then put that counter, along with the places header. So that's it. Before we do that, we want to make sure that, maybe main's there in every page. We want to make sure that the length 0 doesn't show, right? If length, so if length has some value, then do it. Otherwise, don't do it. That's what we want to say. Okay, now let's see how our change works. That's my breakpoint. Document.get elements by class name main. So let's see what happens to this one. Get elements by class name main. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Okay, so see, silly me. Instead of using the variable counter, I just said length. That's the reason why it's not working. Okay, counter. So that is why debugging is essential. Without that, it's going to be really hard to track any problems. So just make sure that you spend some time and learn how to debug using the Chrome debugger. So let's see, there are 5 counter objects, so we are good. See how it says 5 top places to visit in Cleveland? So just something simple. What we have done here is initially when we started working, we said HTML is going to be where my elements are. I'm going to define just the content of my page. Then we went to CSS and we said, I'm going to only define the styles. If you remember in my instructions I had said before, please do not combine your styles and your HTML. And the reason is because we want to have separation of roles and responsibilities. HTML should only have content. Style should only have, the look and feel of every element. And JavaScript should hold all the functionality. It is pretty clear and it keeps it really simple. So if something doesn't work in your page, so for example, what happens is when you keep the functionality separate, it's much easier to maintain the code. If you were to have like style in every single page and there is no reusability there and there could be a lot of redundancy and it becomes really a maintenance nightmare. Same with JavaScript. But this approach to writing JavaScript where you are attaching a JavaScript function to an element is considered very obtrusive, meaning that now we are mixing JavaScript into HTML. So if, for example, you add this add style, and let's see what happens if in the JavaScript, I remove this function. Or, for example, there is an error. It won't let you load the page. So the page load will be affected. The functionality of the page will be affected. and it would be a very bad user experience. So unobtrusive JavaScript is basically the concept where we think that the separation of concern should be in such a way that other than linking the JavaScript and the style to the page, there should be no other way that they should even know about the existence of each other. There should be no way, no place where the HTML references anything in the JavaScript or in the style other than what it's meant for. So the idea is to like not do it this way, but instead to use something called as event listener. So by adding an event listener, you're isolating that JavaScript functionality. The JavaScript knows to add that event to an element, and that's the only place you would see them connected. So we can do the same functionality in a different way, and I'll show you just that in a minute now. So we don't want this guy or this guy, right? So we don't like it. We don't want to show them, make a call from HTML. So all we now have is in our head, we have a reference to the styles, and that's about it. Now, how do we connect these two? And that is where your event listeners play an important role. You go in here. This is still relevant. This is still relevant. This is still relevant. What we are going to do is we are going to say document dot get element by ID, whatever that element was. Add event listener. That's what we are going to say. Let's see what our element is. We were doing background. Let's see how many elements have background. Okay, that's the only element. So if you want, you can add an ID. Doesn't matter. Okay, just to be safe, I just added an ID there. Div background. We take div background, go to the JavaScript and say for this element, add an event listener, mouse over, and then use the function add style. Okay, let's refresh the page now. The functionality still works. So if you look at this function, it will be called on Windows load. So